We are on Daf Yud Aleph, Amid Aleph, Rava Omar. But let's just summarize. We have the Shita Beit Shammai in our Mishnah that the minimum amount of kesef or shava kesef for Kiddushin has to be a dinar. And we had until this point three different explanations for the Shita of Beit Shammai. And we started with Rab Zera, and he spoke about the kpeda of the Isha, she's makpedes, unless you give a Tover Chashuv. And we had the explanation of Rav Yosef that anytime the Torah requires kesef, it's got to be kesef tzuri. And then we had a third explanation of who was it that said that we derive it from the hefta. Right, Rav Yosef says kol kosav is kesef tzuri. In any event, what's common to all these three explanations of Beit Shammai is that they're all d'oraisa. Rava says no. Hainu time to Beit Shammai shalo yu benos Yisrael hefker. According to Rava, the invalid kiddushin of less than a dinar is a takonis chachamim. It's not a d'oraisa at all. And Chacham wanted to protect the honor of a woman, that a Jewish woman shouldn't be considered like bezilzul in the eyes of the brios, that, you could just give her a pruta and then she's married. And therefore the Chachamim established the takana that she would not be niskadsha b'kiddushin, invalid kiddushin, with less than a dinar. And the Rashba adds here that we have to activate the principle of kol de mekadesh adaito de rabbanan mekadesh. So now we start the new sugya. Beis Hillel omer bepruta. Now the simple understanding of Beis Hillel is that we go out to the market and we see if the object that was given to her is worth a pruta. Sover of Yosef l'meimar pruta koldu. According to Rav Yosef, Beis Hillel's pruta is a matbea shel nechoshes. It's a copper coin, and it's katan. It's very small. It's the smallest coin in the shuk, and it's called a pruta. And the value of a pruta changes from one generation to the other. Sometimes the malchus adds a certain extra weight to the pruta, and sometimes it devaluates the pruta by using less of a weight. It's like, for example, I remember when I was a kid, $1 in America was called a silver certificate. It was worth something. Then they made it into a federal certificate, Federal Reserve. So in any event, the logic of Rav Yosef is that there's really not some sort of objective set shear of mammon with regard to Beis Hillel in requiring a minimum of shava pruta. It changes from time to time. It's not objective. It's not set. It will always be a reflection of the smallest coin in that country where the Kiddushin took place. Amalei Abaye, Abai immediately objects to Rav Yosef from the Mishnah of Halot Ktoni. Look at the Mishnah, and it says, Kama hiya pruta. The Mishnah gives you an objective standard for the value of a pruta. Echad mishmona v'isari talki. It's 1/8 of an isari talki. Now, according to you, the pruta doesn't have a set value. It's always the lowest coin that's used in the in the shuk of that particular country. So why would the Mishnah have to bother by telling me how much its value is of 1/8 of an Isra Italki? It all depends upon what country you're in. And Abai tries to offer an answer to defend Rav Yosef. If you'll say, Hani Mili Bidoro Shel Moshe. That when the Mishnah gives you a shear of a pruta, it's only relative to the pruta that was extant at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. So relative to that pruta, the Tanav Mishnah derives the conclusion that in Doro Shel Moshe, the pruta was worth 1/8 of an Isar Haitalki. But the Mishnah did not have in mind to give me a set value for the pruta that would be valid for Kiddushin at the time of the Mishnah. It was only going back to the Dor of Moshe Rabbeinu of Al-Hacha. But here, when Beis Hill says that an Isha was Kadeshes with a minimum of a pruta, it's Kiddush Hashiva Leilinshi. It's whatever people in that generation, in that country, would consider as chashiv. What do they consider as a pruta? And it doesn't matter what the pruta is valued at in comparison to the pruta of Moshe. So maybe it's less than the pruta of Moshe. So again, Abai is suggesting that 1/8 of an Isar Italki is only vis-a-vis the pruta of Moshe. But today, the pruta might theoretically be worth a lot less than its value of 1/8 of an Isar Italki, as it were evaluated at the time Moshe Rabbeinu. That was the suggestion of Abai. So, for example, in our time in Eretz Yisrael, there's something called a grush. I mean, again, I don't know if it's still in circulation. Or even in America, the American penny. Today, the American penny is almost valueless. I don't know if you could buy anything with the American penny. And yet, according to Rav Yosef, Beis Hill would validate the Kiddushin, because that's exactly what a Shova Pruta means. So now Abai rejects this. He says, V'haki asa Rav Dimi, Omar. When Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he made a statement, Shia Rebbe Simoy V'doro. There was a story that took place in which case a woman received Kiddushin of a Pruta during the period of time of Rav Simai. And Rav Simai went out and evaluated how much is this Pruta worth in his time. Kamehi Pruta. And until he came to the conclusion that the Pruta in his dar was Echad Mishmor Bisar Italki, he did not validate the Kiddushin. Meaning if it was less than 1/8 of an Isar, the Kiddushin was not valid. So we see clearly that he didn't just say, well, look, this is the pruta, the lowest coin that's in currency in our time. No. He went out to make an evaluation. He wanted to see what could the pruta buy. What's the buying power of the pruta? And similarly, ki asa Ravin, when Ravin came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Amar Rav Dostoi, Rav Yanev, Rav Oshia, Shiru Kama Havi Pruta, Echad Mishisha Bisar Italki. We'll see later on why they came to a conclusion that for kashas of Kiddushin, 1/6 is required of an Isar Italki. But one thing that's absolutely common to both Ravin and this whole group of Amoraim, is that they wanted to know what was the value of the pruta. It had to have the objective value, whether it's 1/6 of a Isar Italki, 1/8 of the Isar Italki. They didn't just say, as Rav Yosef would have said, well, this is the pruta of this country. So Rav Yosef now defends himself. Amalei Rav Yosef says, Tavayi Hachi, according to you, that we have to come up with an objective evaluation of the pruta, what its value is, and less than that, if it's not 1/8 of an Isar, then it's not considered a pruta, even though it's valid in this country and in this currency. Hainu Disnina. We have a brisa that says Sevach Hashov Kama Prutos B'Shnei Sloim. And if you figure out the ratio between a pruta and Shnei Sloim, you'll find that it's Yoser Me'alpayim Prutos, that it takes more than 2,000 prutos to get 2 Sloim. Now, what are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me that the pruta is 1/8 of an Isar? That's impossible. Why? Because Hashtal Paim Lo Havin. Shnei Sloim is not even worth 2,000 prutos of a pruta that's 1/8 of an Isar Italki is Yeser Me'apayim Korile? How could the Brisa say that there's more than 2,000 prutos in Shnei Sloim? It's not true. Because the calculation is something like, let's say, 1,500 prutos, as we'll soon see. Not 2,000. So we must be concluding, therefore, says Rav Yosef, the price is talking about prutos that were noig in that zman. What was the pruta in that time? And that had an erech of less than 1/8 of an isar. And we should derive from this the conclusion that even a pruta that's less than 1/8 of an isar is considered a pruta and it's valid Kiddushin. There was an elderly scholar who said to Rav Yosef and to Abaye, in order to reject the kasha of Rav Yosef between 2,000 and 1,500, Anan Tninole Korov Lalpayim. In the Bryce, as I had the text of the Bryce, it doesn't say Yoser Me'alpayim, it says Korov Lalpayim, almost 2,000. So Gemara says, how can you say such a thing? Sof, Alpha v'chamesh me'ot tlos in the Shita is 1,536 prutos. And that's what you get for Shnei Sloim. How could the Tana possibly call that Korov Lalpayim? It's about, 3/4 of Shnei Sloim. It's not Korov Lalpayim. Now, in terms of the mathematics, we have here a sela is 4 dinrim. A dinner is 24 isrim. That the Gemara is going to say soon. So the sela is 96 isrim. And the prut is 1/8 of an isar, which would mean that the sela has 768 prutos, because 4 times 24 times 8 is 768. 2 sloim, therefore, would be 2 times 768. Is 1,536. It doesn't even come to anywhere near 2,000. And the Gemara answers, Keva da nafkalemi palga, since it's more than a minion of half, is Korov Lalpayim Korile. So it seems from this Gemara that once you get over 1,000 of 2,000, you can count it as 2,000. But I think it's more logical to assume that what the Gemara has in mind is that since in the relationship between the second 1,000, when you start from 0 and reach 2,000, meaning you start from 1,001, then it's more than 500. So it's more than halfway there to the second 1,000, and therefore we call it 2,000s. And now the Gemara goes back to a machlokes about the relationship, the ratio between a pruta and an isar. Gufa kiyas Rav Dimi Omar Shir Rav Simi B'Dora Kama Pruta Kami Pruta is Echad Mishmona B'Isar Tal. Yasa Ravim. So Ravin came Omar. He said that Shiru Rav Hidosav Rav Yanai Rav Oshia Kami Pruta Echad Mishisha B'Isar Talki. It's 1/6 of an isar. So Abai wants to suggest that this issue about whether the prut is 1/8 of an isar or 1/6 of an isar is an old machlokas tanoim. Amar le Abai Rav Dimi Nema at v'Ravin, you Rav Dimi, who came up with 1/8, and Ravin, who came up with 1/6. When you say Ravin was the one who brought the statement of 1/6 in the name of 3 Amoraim, is therefore are you arguing about the machlokas in the following brisa? The Sanya we learned in the brisa, Pruta sha'omru chachamim echad mishmona isar italki. That's the cheshbon. Sheish ma kesef dinar. So there's 6 mo's to a dinar. And a ma is 2 pundionim, and a punjon is 2 isarin, and the isar is 2 musmesiim, and the mismes is shnei kuntrokenikin, and the kuntrokin is shtei prutos, and according to this calculation, the pruta is 1/8 of an isar italki. And here he has the calculation in the footnote. Again, he points out that isar and mismes and kudri kanang are all names of coins of currency. And the isar was 2 musmesim, that's 4 kudresim, and that's 8 prutos. Now the dinar is 6 mos, and the ma has 4 isrim. So therefore, the dinar has 192 prutos. Rav Shimon Gamliel is the dissenting view. He has a different kind of a currency. Shlosha hajrisin lema, shnei hansin lahadris, shnei shminin lahanitz, shtei prutos l'shavin, nimtza pruta achas mishisha b'isar italki. And again, the calculation is as such. Ma is 3 hadrisin, which is the same as 6 hansin, which equals 12 shmonim, which is 24 prutos. And memele, you get 1/6 of an isar italki. Lema demar, Omar ketanakama. You, Rav Dimi, hold like the Tanakama that a pruta is 1/8 of an isar. And in contrast, with Ravin, the Omar to Rav Shimon Gamliel, who calculates 1/6 of an isar italki. Says Rav Dimi in response, Amalei Rav Dimi says to Abaye, Bein l'didiu, bein l'Ravin, whether it's me or Ravin, I'll leave it the Tanakama. We're both agreeing with the Tanakama of this brisa. And the Tanakama of this brisa is the stama of our Mishnah. We pass it like that the shir prut is 1/8 of an isar, v'lo kasha. So don't ask a kasha on Ravin who says that a prut is 1/6 of an isar. Ha diakeri sure, ha dizoli sure. So again, it's not the pruta that went up in value or down in value, but rather it's the isar. So the normal value of an isar, which is reflected in the sheet of Rav Simoy, is shmona prutos. An isar is worth 8 prutos. But when Ravin said in the name of that whole group of Amoraim, in a later period of time, that the pruta is 6 isarim, that's not because the value of the pruta went up, it was an inflated value, but rather the zil isure, the value of the isar went down. So everybody agrees to the same identical value of a pruta in relationship to a dinar. And now Rav Dimi explains, Hadi Akir Isure, when Rav Simoy said he was talking about Isurim Yikarim, they are on their very regular value, they're not devaluated, is Kum. Kum means Ahmad. Esrim the Arba Bezuzi. The Isar was worth 24 zuzim, or 24 dinrim. And that's what it was at the time of the Mishnah. But Rav Distoi and his colleagues, they were talking about Kam Tal Sinu Train Bezuzi. Again, the word Kam means Ahmad. The Isar was 32 to a zuz. So the pruta had a set price, a set value. And there's 192 prutos in a dinar shel kesef. And therefore, if there are 24 isurim in a dinar, then the value of a pruta, according to everyone, is shmina shebi isar. However, when the value is 32 isarim in dinar, then the value of the pruta is 1/6 of an isar. And that ends that sugi. Now we start a new sugi. And this is called Shemeshava Pruta B'Madai. What happens if he gives something to offer Kiddushin which is clearly worth less than a pruta? And you and I would have said that for sure it's not a valid Kiddushin. Amar Shmuel, Kitcha B'Tamra, Afilu Omed Kur Tamar B'Dinar. if you could buy a full core, that's a massive amount of tamarim with one single dinar, which means that one single tamra is worth a lot less than a pruta. Nevertheless, it's Shmuel mekudeshes, and we're going to see in a minute that the word mekudeshes here means safek mekudeshes. Why? Chayshinan shema shava pruta v'madai. Maybe if she takes the same pruta into a different country called Madai, that tamar, that date, is worth a lot more than a pruta because there's a dearth of tamarim in Madai. It's like here in Eretz Yisrael, you have seasons. So if a fruit is out of season and you want to buy an imported fruit from another country, you're going to pay double the price. And that's called Shema Shava Pruta B'Madai. According to Shmuel, what do you mean B'Pruta V'Shava Pruta? We should always say that maybe even if it's not Shava Pruta here, it's Shava Pruta in Madai. Lo kasha ha b'kedushay vadai, ha b'kedushay safei. When Beis Hillel was talking about the minimum of a Shava Pruta, which means that right here in this place where he's Makadosh, it's got to be worth a Pruta, he's talking about Kiddushin Vada. And less than a Pruta is not Kiddushin Vada, even though it might be worth a Pruta elsewhere, but we don't know that. But Shmuel is saying Kiddushin Safek. We always have to suspect and consider the possibility that elsewhere this object is worth a Pruta. And the Gemara tells the story. A man was Makadosh a woman with a bag of cotton balls. Yosef Rav Shim Bachia Kami Derav Kama Ayin Ba. Is this worth Islay Pruta Shabruta, and therefore it's Kiddushin low? So Gemara asks, what do you mean? Iles Be Shav Pruta low? If it doesn't sell here for a Shav Pruta, it's not Kiddushin. Shmuel Chayshinon. Shmuel says we have to worry that maybe it's worth a Pruta elsewhere. Lo Kasha. When Rav Shimi Bar Chia was bodek, he was checking it out. Does this group of cotton balls have the value of a Shav Pruta? He wanted to know whether it's Kiddushin Vadai, and therefore if somebody else would be Mekadosh her, it's meaningless. But Shmuel the Shmuel big Kiddushin Safek, and therefore according to Shmuel, even though it's not worth a Pruta here, we're going to be choshesh for both this Makadesh and another subsequent Makadesh, because it's a safek. Another story. A man married a woman off with a piece of stone. It was like a light blue stone. Now another man comes along and he marries the same woman with a pruta. Who is she married to? Yosef of Chizuk Shirley. He starts evaluating that little stone that was given to him by the first Makadesh. He is Beishav Pruti Lo. And he came to the conclusion that if it's not worth a Pruta, then that Kiddushin is not valid, and she's married to the second guy. Even if he came to the conclusion that in the marketplace, no one is going to pay a Pruta for a broken piece of a blue stone, but we still have to consider the possibility that maybe it's worth a Pruta in Madai, and therefore she needs a get from the first guy. And the Gemara answers, Rav Chisda lo savar like Shmuel. Rav Chisda rejected this whole idea. There's no such thing that it's worth a Pruta elsewhere. We have to know that it's worth a Pruta here. And we have to make an evaluation here and determine whether she's married to the first guy or the second guy. So the value of Shava Pruta, according to Rav Chisda, is relative. And it depends upon the place where the Kiddushin transpired. Says Rav Chisda, I don't care what goes on in terms of the value of this object elsewhere, whereas Shmuel analyzes the object and its value from a global, universal perspective. And the Gemara tells us more about that story. So again, Rav Chisda came to the conclusion that the Even that was given by the Rishon for Kiddushin was a Shava Pruta. I'm sorry, was not a Shava Pruta. And therefore she's not married to the Rishon because he gave her an Evan that's worth less than a Pruta, but rather she's married to the Sheni. Amarle Ime. So now we're going into a slightly different avenue of this sugya, and that's a question of nemanus. The mother of the Rishon says to Rav Chizda, "Ve'hahu Yoma, the Kidsha, on that very day that the Rishon, my son, was Makadisha with this Evan, Habibe Shava Pruta. On that day that he married her off, that he married her, that Evan was worth a Pruta. And then it went down in value before the second guy was Makadish her with a Shava Pruta. But since at the time of my son's Kiddushin, it was worth a Pruta, therefore, she is married to my son, and not to the Sheni.